Welcome to KLEAN Radio, helping to navigate the journey of recovery by removing the stigma and offering a choice for a new life. With your host, Pat O'Brien.
Radio and television personality, we know him from the World Series, a Super Bowl, NBA Finals, Final Four, U.S. Open, a legend.
And distinguished clinical expert, Andrew Spanswick.
Andrew Spanswick is with me, and there's a reason, because he knows everything and I don't.
I'm Robert Shapiro.
I'm Jack Osborne. You're listening to KLEAN Radio. I think you're pretty cool, Andrew. Thank you. I like your vibes. And listen, if I was getting loaded, I totally would come to your treatment center.
KLEAN Radio is presented in part by Pure Simple Juice. Taste the best of what nature has to offer. PureSimpleJuice.com. Addiction is in your backyard. You can join the conversation right now.
That's the way we do it. Hi, everybody. I'm Pat O'Brien. Welcome to KLEAN Radio for another Sunday night. And we have a huge show. That's a combination of good and huge.
Good. It's
Did you know that word?
It's Ebononics now.
Yeah, it's a bit. We have a big show tonight, and we're happy about that. Let's get some of the. Andrew, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Yeah.
You saw Mad Max. Tell me.
I did see Mad Max. It's a spoiler alert here. It's a wonderful story of going to somewhere and then turning around and going back.
So does it make any sense?
No. The lead character supposedly was going for redemption, and I still don't know of what.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Maybe that's for the sequel.
And you went with a lawyer. How was that?
Yeah, well,
Thanks for inviting me, by the way.
Do you really wanted to go see Mad Max with a lawyer?
No.
Right. They're pointing out every, thing that they're doing illegal.
That's right. That's nice.
Right? I'm like, maybe the law doesn't apply to, right? Post-apocalyptic world.
Welcome to KLEAN Radio. We're all over the place, and I'll get to that now. We're all up and down the coast. We're on WROR in New York. Biggest station in New York, the Mets station. And the Mets have sort of come back down to earth. They can't find their offense. And if you have a problem with the Mets, they were fine when we started. Okay? Yep. But call Len Berman and ask him what the hell's going on there. But we're happy to have New York, and we got a very loyal following there. I got a lot of tweets and emails from my friends in New York who listen. Our call-in number is 800-222-5222. 800-222-5222.
I know you want to say it.
I know. I used to say it's like calling a New York taxi, and Andrew pointed out nobody calls a New York taxi. KLEANradio.com, Facebook.com/KLEANradio. Our Twitter is @KLEANradio. Mine is @POB Pat O'Brien, and Andrew's is @KLEANCEO.
Which he still hates.
Right. And by the way, Twitter has a new thing. If you get stalked on Twitter, or people are mean to you on Twitter, they have a new thing you can push, and you can find exactly who's been stalking you and why, and people who come on and just to hang out on your thing. It's really good, Andrew, because a lot of people have, we did a story a couple of weeks ago on KLEAN Weekly that some people have, tried to commit suicide over this kind of.
Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of issues with privacy, and then we're seeing, we have more and more problems with this as time goes on. It's especially bad for people that are addicts and trying to move past their past, and it keeps haunting them on the internet. And it's something that I think that, from a regulatory standpoint, some of these companies need to be able to be responsible and remove content when people really ask for it to be removed.
And Costello, the CEO there, he actually said, we suck at controlling these people.
Right.
But now they've got blockers up, and you can find out who is on your site. You can and get verified. You can do all that. And Facebook also has some suggestions on what to do. And it's also can create enormous emotional problems, like you said.
Yeah, we're so early into this whole new age of where, social media has become the dominant form of interaction for most people. They just sit there and sit at a phone all day. And I think that the rules of how people interact haven't been formed. So we don't really have a good sense of ethics, and we're not raising people in this new generations of technology to have technological ethics. So we see horrible traumas where people get picked on and end up suicidal, or we see postings of homicidal stuff and people jumping on the bandwagon with terrorists. And, I'm not, it's freedom of speech is important, but at the same point, there's a certain amount of responsibility the private company has to regulate their own content.
Yeah. I just delete them. I think I deleted 10,000 people. When they just get really, well, why deal with that? Joining us now is a man I can't wait to talk to. And I think, Andrew, you might even know Gregory Gourdet. He was the Gregory, how are you? It's Pat O'Brien.
Hi.
Hey, Pat, it's Andrew. I have eaten at Departure way too many times.
That's good to hear.
He is Gregory Gourdet is the executive chef at Portland's a Pan Asian restaurant, Departure, and it's in the Nines, right? It's in the hotel there.
It's at the top floor.
And Gregory came in second in the competition, but who cares? Who's laughing now, right, Gregory?
I'm good. I'm good with everything.
And there's an incredible chef, and we're coming up to Portland in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
And I expect I'm sure everybody gets great service, but I expect.
Well, Stephanie, she's a waitress there.
How did you become a chef? Let's start with that. We'll get into the other stuff in a minute.
Me? Well, I started cooking when I had to feed myself when I was going to college in Montana. I was actually pursuing a wildlife biology degree, but not really kind of knowing exactly what I wanted to do with that. And, just basic necessity, you have to feed yourself in college. It was the first time I was living on my own and paying rent and living in a house and all that good stuff. So it just kind of developed. It was a small artistic college town, and we had dinner parties and hanging out with the art department, and it just kind of stemmed from there. And my first job was actually washing dishes at one of the best restaurants in town. And
you learned?
And I did. I learned, and I graduated from college, and I went straight to culinary school. That was about 18 years ago.
One of the things I need to know from you before we get off the air is I like to cook at home. How do I make the perfect pan-fried steak? The kind where it's done all the way through. This is not what we're going to talk to you about tonight, but just as long as I got you. I put olive oil. Maybe I put too much olive oil on the pan.
But you're going for medium rare?
Yes.
I think you want to get your pan nice and hot first, and then you want to get your oil nice and hot first. And then you want to make sure your steak is patted dry really well, so there isn't extra moisture. And then you want to make sure there's plenty of salt and pepper, which is the two most important ingredients. Yep. And then you get in, just drop it in. Don't move around too much. Get a nice caramelization, nice Maillard reaction. Get it nice crusty, and then you flip it over.
Right.
Or we could just go eat at Departure.
The first time I did, the fire alarm went off because you just gave me the greatest tip, and that's it still has some moisture on it, so it blew up the thing. So you've been very open about your nightlife and party lifestyle and clubs and music, and the struggle you had with addiction at one point. What happened?
Well, for me, I think my story is like a lot of other people's stories. We share similar stories, but, I started experimenting with drugs in high school. I grew up in Queens to parents who moved here from Haiti, so my parents grew up very different than what I did. I grew up in New York City in, the early 80s into the 90s, and I started experimenting with drugs in high school. I ate acid, mushrooms, all these kind of crazy drugs.
Right.
Because it was just a kind of different thing. And, that kind of kept going. In the 90s, there were a lot of designer drugs around. I fell in love with techno and house music and going to raves, and that's still very much a part of my lifestyle. But, along came the drugs with that in terms of designer drugs, ecstasy, and all that good stuff. So, over the course of, many, many years, that just kind of stuck with me. There isn't any addiction in my family whatsoever. So for me, it was just kind of a repetitive thing and kind of programming myself into addiction. I moved to New York to pursue a career in culinary arts. I went to culinary school. I graduated and moved to New York City, and it was kind of fast times, going to clubs, working at fancy restaurants.
I actually remember those days. Did you hang out at the Limelight and the Tunnel and all that?
Oh, yeah.
I was actually... I was Andrew, shame on you.
Oh, man, I was speaking my language.
I was actually a Studio 54 guy, and I did my first acid with Timothy Leary.
That's awesome.
So, and he was a friend of mine. We used to run around and do his acid, which was good acid,
relatively speaking.
Relatively speaking, yeah. But what were you saying, Andrew?
I was just talking about the New York scene in the 90s, early 90s. And there was a place called the Limelight. I'm sure you've seen some movies on it.
And Greg, when did the light come on for you? When did you figure out you're in trouble?
I can equate a good 7 years of, my last 7 years in New York were pretty dark. It's, I remember the first time I was late for work because I went out drinking and blacked out. And, I can equate that day with the kind of the beginning of it all. And, I teetered around for a long time. It developed into an addiction to freebasing cocaine by the end of it all. And, it took a series of, getting fired from jobs. It took a series of, kind of moving around from place to place a little bit more than I wanted to. I was finally working for some really good friends of mine, and, you know, after consecutive being late for a few times, because we all partied together, but I was definitely the one who stayed out a lot later than everybody else and showing up late for work. My friend just told me, listen, you can't work here anymore unless you go to rehab, and that was kind of the final straw, you know? It was the first one.
You know, Gregory, a lot of people that are like, that don't know about this illness, and they're out there and they think, you know, how can he go from drinking to, you know, freebasing Coke? And what was that process like for you in your head? Like, how did that come about? Can you explain to like people that would never freebase Coke? And yet, I'm sure there's probably a time in your life where you were like, I would never freebase Coke.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a series of different things. It's like you're chasing a high, you know, and you dull towards certain things. And if you're the type of person who in excess is part of your lifestyle, you know, you're always looking for something else. And it's also a mixture of just getting in with the wrong crowd, you know, people with a lot more drug experience than you know, those are the type of people that you're hanging out with at like 8 in the morning, you know, and if they're showing you something new, something different, you know, cocaine's extremely addictive. You know, I had clear, you know, snorting cocaine addiction, so, you know, when, you know, freebasing cocaine and smoking it was a completely different high, and that consumed me for a little bit, and, you know, it was just kind of...
Is that the drug that really took you down, or...?
It was, you know, I bounced back from that, I gave that up, you know, but, you know, the drinking was still there. You know, the snorting cocaine was still there. And then, you know, Molly came into the picture, you know, at the end of it all. Right. You know, before my last stretch.
The bottom line, we're talking to Gregory Gourdet, who's a chef up in Portland. We're going to be in Portland. He's the executive chef at the popular Pan-Asian restaurant, Departure, which is a remarkably wonderful restaurant. And I want to just get a couple things in here, and then we'll move on to the rest of your life. Because you've never looked back, right? How many years has it been?
I celebrate 6 years this past March.
Way to go. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And I think one of the things, and I'm right with you, I'm coming up on 7 after, you know, a bunch of tries. But I think Andrew will agree. And by the way, if you want to talk to Gregory, call in 800-222-5222. And don't be a moron and ask him about how to cook stuff. Just that's so lame. 800-222-5222 is the thing. But Andrew and I talk about this all the time. That I don't think, and I run a group over at our West Hollywood thing, and we talk about this, that unless you have some sort of consequence at some point, even the smallest one, like losing your job or somebody saying, that's a good thing, right? Because then you can take a look at yourself.
Yeah, I think there's, you know, a variety of different consequences too, right, Gregory? I mean, we've got you know, mental, physical,
I didn't get sober till a couple years after my bottom. You know, I think that was my bottom, you know, those last few days in New York, and I entered rehab, but I only lasted a month in rehab before I moved to the West Coast. And, you know, I was trying to get it together, but, you know, I really had no one in my life who was in recovery, you know, until I moved to Portland, Oregon. And my sous chef was sober 2 years, and, you know, I was 32, and he was in his 20s. And I'd never met someone who hadn't drank in 2 years before. It was mind-blowing.
So that's a godsend right there,
you know,
right?
Oh, definitely. You know, and I would hang out with him and his friends, and they were just normal people. They were all chefs and just living normal lives. I would immediately run to the bar after hanging out with them, but, you know, something in there was making sense, you know.
Yeah. But by the way, let's not get crazy here and call chefs normal people.
Yeah, I mean, there is something about the culinary arts, though, that culture and that whole like sort of tribal group, right? I mean, you know,
yeah. I mean,
it's,
you know,
tattoos and drinking and
you know, we're playing with fire, we're playing with knives, we're working all night. You know, it's a hard life, you know.
Yeah.
So,
but it takes the kind of dedication that you have to have a really clear mind, don't you? I mean, it's not a matter of, you know, when I watch a good chef, and I know a lot of chefs. You know, the focus on the food is so intense.
Razor sharp.
Razor sharp, yeah. Why is that? Because, well, I know why, but it's just like when I watch, let's say, when I watch you, just every cut has got to be, you know, just exactly right. Is that what is that? Perfection, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a sense of perfectionism. There's a level of perfectionism that you need to have in your life to kind of be a great chef. You know, you can be a cook. You can be a young cook and kind of party your way through that, but, you know, to become a great chef, you know, you need razor focus. There's so much good talent around there, and food is so dynamic. You know, what you can do with it is absolutely amazing and endless. So you need all your brain cells, you need all your soul, you need all your heart to be able to really kind of be amazing. And, ever since I got sober, I've never had to look back. I'm not the type of person who craves or misses the lifestyle by any means. And I've been given so many amazing opportunities throughout this whole thing, things I never, ever imagined would happen, and it's just been fantastic. And
so, Gregory, as a chef, you're dealing with food, you're dealing with taste. Wine is a huge part of the market you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And cocktails in Portland, right? It's kind of the town of the cocktail these days.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that? How do you make sure pairings are correct? Do you rely on other people? Do you feel pressure sometimes because of that?
I definitely have a great support team in terms of events and things of that nature. I studied wine in culinary school. I had a good chunk of my career where I did drink, so I base it all on kind of just knowledge. But for those strict pairings, I definitely rely on team members to help me. Trusting my front of house staff, my wine director, my beverage director, and kind of if I have to, I just go off and nose.
When you stopped like smoking and drinking and all that, did it change your palate?
Oh, absolutely. It 100% did. I stopped smoking, 15-year menthol smoker the day I got sober, so everything just opened up. I could smell better, I could taste better. I truly know I became a better chef when I got sober.
That's great.
Gregory Gourdet is our guest, and he's at GG 30,000. GG 30,000. What's a 30,000 mean?
I just wanted to find something a little more infinite than 3,000.
A lot of zeros in there. It's at GG 30000. Well, now you've gone completely the other way, as we all have when you hit sobriety. Is that you work out, you go to yoga, you're doing all that, and is that part of your recovery as well? Is just keeping your body, saying I've been there, I've been the other side. I probably weighed 100 pounds at one point.
I don't know. I think for me is like I got so conditioned to working on so little sleep, and I think a lot of times when people get sober, they can't sleep for the first part, and I chose to just exercise like crazy. So I was physically tired at night and just crashed. I never went through a period where, I couldn't sleep because I was getting sober. I just hit the gym, and all these things started happening to me. So for the first few years, I just wanted to stay in shape and work really hard, and I it was just a way of keeping things at bay. I exercised at night because I used to go to the bars at night and used to go to clubs at night, so it just kind of replaced everything.
And I think one of the things that we teach at one of the things at the Clean Centers is that you give somebody structure, and you replace. Alice Cooper once told me that when he stopped drinking, man, was he a drinker. He just switched to golf. I mean, he switched to something else to take all his attention, and now he's a scratch golfer.
Yeah, and that can work. At the same point, you still have to work on all the underlying issues. Certainly, doing things to take up your time are important, and a lot of that we like to see with people giving back. And I'm sure, Gregory, if you think back to if you were, younger, and you must probably meet people all the time in your business. Do you often have people coming up to you, or do you see people that are employees and you notice they have a problem? How do you handle those kind of things?
I've gotten more popular, and through a series of just constantly getting interviewed, I've just come to terms with speaking very openly about my addictions. I'm a member of AA, and we're not supposed to talk about that publicly, but for me, it just helped me so much, and I've been asked so many times what is behind my story that I just had to come clean and be very honest about everything, and I've been able to help other people, and that feels really great. My very good friend here, older gentleman, this established chef, he reached out to me. I've had people reach out to me from different cities and states, looking for help. They're on their third or fourth DUI, and they need to make a change, and they've heard that I was sober, and they asked me for help. So I think it's all been working out where, just being as vocal about it as possible, especially someone who's mildly a public figure, and you can help people. So I've taken that road.
Thanks for joining. We're going to be up there. I go to meetings when I'm in Portland. I went to one that was so far away. I couldn't get a taxi to go there. It was an interesting meeting. It was the one upstairs, way out. I don't know if you know that one, but you'll enlighten me on the good meetings in Portland when we come up there, okay?
Absolutely.
And we'll go to the meeting together. We'll eat, we'll go to the meeting together, and we'll hang out.
Eat at departure.
That sounds awesome.
And we can take an Uber now. Have you tried to get an Uber in Portland?
Yeah, seamless. It's great.
Oh, it's seamless.
Oh, so you're pro Uber. We've been trying to find pro Uber people in Portland.
I am 100% pro Uber. I am.
Okay.
You know why? You know why you have Uber up there? Andrew and I signed that petition from down here.
Yeah, we did. We couldn't get a cab to save our lives, and we ended up hiring a car to drive us around for the 4 days we were there, and it was just...
He didn't know his way around.
Yeah, he didn't know his way around. He had no idea where he was going.
Hey, Gregory, congratulations on your sobriety.
So much.
I can't wait to meet you, and your message is great, and I'm sure you helped a lot of people with this tonight. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Cheers, guys. Thank you so much.
There he is,
Bye-bye.
Chef Gregory Gourdet, who, like a lot of us, just said, I've had enough.
Yep.
And he had on another level, too. You know, a lot of people think that when you're at that level and you go to those clubs and you hang out and you got some money in your pocket, that's all those rich guys. It's a moral issue. It's not a moral issue, you know.
Yeah, and he's a perfect example of progressive addiction, where instead of just like some people, they'll take drugs and then all of a sudden they're like almost instantaneously addicted, or they become addicted without realizing it. He obviously graduated slowly from drinking, binge drinking, and then to using harder and harder drugs. So, you know, it's whatever your story is out there, it's always a little bit different, but there's always some commonality between everybody's story. And I think that's what's interesting with, you know, people come in at different ages now. They come in when they're 22, they come in when they're 15, you know, and then you get people that don't get it until they're 50, 60 years old.
I got sober when I was like 55, 56. Yep. Let's take a call. It's a little off topic, but nothing's off topic here. And it's Amy, who's in Vancouver. Hi, Amy. How are you?
Hi. I'm fine. Haven't called in forever.
Yeah, hey, Amy, how you doing?
What's on your mind tonight?
I wanted to touch on a topic that isn't normally discussed, but it's been a concern of mine because I think it was the start of my drug or my alcohol problem. Years ago, I texted Andrew on this last night. My mom was told by a doctor years ago to smoke to release her stresses. And that's been back in the 50s.
Right.
And in the early 90s, I was in another abusive relationship other than the one that I was just out of. And I had a doctor that told me that I had a heart murmur and that a glass of red wine would be better than the heart medication that he would have put me on because I was so young. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to find out, maybe from Andrew, from your point of view, you know, from a medical point of view, I know that some of the doctors from the old school will say things to help a person, but, you know, I didn't know at the time either because I had never drank a drop in my life. Right. And when he told me to have a glass of red, you know, I was going over to the 7-Eleven and, you know, putting the paper clips to my nose and drinking this stuff because I didn't like the taste.
Well, one of the things that people don't realize about alcohol and what's good for you in alcohol is actually in grape juice. So you don't actually have to drink red wine to get the same beneficial effect. You can just drink 100% pure grape juice, and that will give you the same effect. The other thing is that medication has really improved, and as much as I do believe a lot of doctors overprescribe medications still to this point, there are amazing medications that didn't exist before. So when people had anxiety disorders or depression or ruminating thoughts, doctors would often use things that were available to them, and that was cigarettes and alcohol in the 50s. There's been studies now that say that, you know, there's a beneficial effect to drinking wine every day. I think doctors sometimes don't realize, you know, a doctor isn't in your life every day, so they don't understand your whole lifestyle, and they really rely on you to tell them. And it's amazing to me, you know, you go into the doctor and has a survey, and how many drinks do you have? And it's like, you know, one a week, 3 to 5 a week, like over 5 a week.
Yeah,
and everybody lies about that.
I had never drank at all. At that time, I had never drank, so
right.
I didn't have the desire to.
Yeah.
So when he told me that, I was just like, "There's got to be something else."
Amy, we got to move. We love you. Stay in there.
So much.
Hang in there, baby.
And I'll try and answer your text, Amy. I just was a little busy today, but I'll get to them.
Not a problem.
Okay. No
That's
problem.
Amy from up in Vancouver, and she's right. I mean, there's always something. I started smoking, and my doctor actually said, as long as you're not drinking and smoke well, you know that whole story. Denial about it. But
He's in denial about it.
But he said, you can do anything you want, just don't drink. And I've kept to that. We come back, a couple of bikers. I like that. couple of bikers. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Don't let addiction to drugs or alcohol steal another year of your life. KLEAN Treatment Center provides world-class addiction assistance that also treats the underlying causes and provides vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean. Live, kind, professional help is standing by to provide immediate assistance or to simply answer questions and provide guidance. If you or someone you care about is suffering from addiction, take action now. Log on to cleantreatmentcenters.com. That's clean with a K.
Welcome back to KLEAN Radio. I'm Pat O'Brien. Andrew Spanswick is here. And we are on Twitter at KLEAN Radio, Facebook.com/KLEAN Radio, KLEANRadio.com. We have a YouTube channel now, and that's being worked on, and but it's still there. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a major announcement where we're going to partner, we hope, with we have a major announcement coming up where a lot more people, like millions more people, can hear us.
Yeah, very excited.
And we're very excited about that. We're moving along. Television's on its way. And so we are just skipping along like somebody threw a stone, and there's a metaphor, right? And we're skipping across the water to the better side. How's that? Not working for you?
It's like a stone version of chicken crossing a road.
Exactly. Wow.
Okay.
The big story about 5 hours ago, all hell broke loose in Waco, Texas. These dudes are these motorcycle gangs, and they were gangs, and about 100 of them, with hundreds of weapons, got into a shootout somewhere outside the Twin Peaks bar, which is a famous gang hangout out in Waco, and 9 people so far dead, and it just looks like a mess up there. Joining us now, sorry guys.
What kind of lead-in is that?
But joining us now are two bikers who have an organization called Messengers of Recovery. A little bit different of a gang. It's a club, really, not a gang. But and they got a big activity coming up. But they're always doing big activities. Mark Elkins, Mark, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having us, Pat.
Glad to have you. And of course, my old friend Chris Sweeney, who has seen me go through it up close and personal.
Yes, I have.
How was that for you?
Just good to see you here now.
I'm here now. And,
big change.
And it has been a change, hasn't there?
Huge.
And Chris saw me through from 10 years ago, and he's been on my side and part of my recovery forever. First of all, and I brought up this gang thing not to be cute or anything, but I think a lot of people's attitudes toward bikers are this kind of thing. And it's ironic if this came on this night. We're talking about good bikers in terms of bad bikers, but what do you make of this?
Well, that's not what we're about.
I know.
We are a clean and sober motorcycle club, and we like to put out a different image than what people really think about bikers. You know, people think of the outlaw bikers.
Right.
We've been around since 1995. We're one of the bigger clean and sober clubs, certainly on the western part of the United States, if not in the country. We like to spread the message of recovery.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that. But I've been to. We were talking about Sturgis earlier, where all the bikers meet, and most of those dudes are sober now anyway, right? I mean, I find more guys now in these clubs that are sober as opposed to outlaws, right, Mark?
There are a lot of sober people in the clubs that we found, and some of these clubs have come to us to help with certain members at times. Because they know what we're about, and we are about giving back what's so freely been given to us once we decided to change our way of living. And that's what the Messengers has done for me and for others.
I got these cool patches, Andrew, which they won't give me one, but that's... You think an honorary one, right, or something, Chris?
Well, we're going to get you a support shirt, Pat.
All right, thanks. The Messengers of Recovery, they're clean, they're sober, they ride around, they go to... Let's say AA meetings, NA meetings, you spread the word, what you've learned, and you pass it on, which is part of what recovery is about. How did this start? Were you guys all... Who started this 20 years ago? John, right? But who started it? Yeah.
Yeah, there was a group of members that didn't fit in any of the... They were a square peg trying to fit in round holes,
Right.
and they were sober. And they loved to ride motorcycles, and they loved to have fun. And... they just decided that, you know what, let's start something from nothing. And with the blessing of some of the other clubs, 5 guys got together and created the Messengers in 1995. And from that point on, we do not recruit. That's one of our standards. It's a program of attraction, just like the program is.
Yep.
If you want what we have, then come and talk to a messenger, and they'll tell you how to get where you need to be to become a part of us. And since then, we've grown from the San Fernando Valley is where it started. Then they branched off into San Diego. Then Riverside was formed. And then Santa Maria became a chapter. And then City of Orange, we have a chapter. And now we have one in the Santa Clarita Valley. So it just keeps growing. We're only in Southern California. We go as far as Santa Maria. And that's basically part of my control issues.
I think a lot of the issues that people have with motorcycle clubs is that they really.
I heard that.
Yeah, well, I heard it too. Okay, so anyway, so that a lot of people think that motorcycle clubs are like motorcycle gangs, so they don't understand the amount of work you guys do for the community, not only just directly regarding sobriety, but also for the community at large. That's a large part of what brings you together as a group, correct?
Absolutely. We who are in recovery in the messengers that I can speak for, we have been through the gamut of life. Mm-hmm. We have all been through our own personal hells, and we are coming out the backside of that through recovery. We have people that come in with 2 or 3 days and end up hanging around and getting multiple years, and away they go, and we get to watch their lives change. This November, I will have been a messenger for 15 years. I've been sober for 16 years. So I was found by a messenger who's no longer here anymore, and he took me under his wing, and thank God that I'm here.
Yeah.
They found me, and we save a lot of souls, and in that process, we get to give back.
Right.
Because we all did, forgive the term, crappy things to a lot of people, including our families, friends, and whatever. And being in this club is about giving back, so that we can try to even out that slate.
And you can still keep your identity of things that you like.
Yeah.
We're all insane, and we still love to ride, and we still love to have a good time. And we get to do that here.
The thing about it is, and Chris, I see Chris a lot, and, how great was it when you found something that you love? Because I know I've never seen you not on a bike, by the way. You even own a car? I mean,
I do own a car.
Okay. But I've never seen you not on a bike. And what was it like to find something, and we're going to get into all your what's coming up, but what was it like when you said, oh my God, here's a bunch of guys who have what I have and want to do what I want to do, and Chris is a beacon of recovery, and he's very good. He helped get me sober. But, and to combine them, as Andrew said, that's Wonderland, right?
It really is Wonderland. I can remember when I'd ridden bikes all my life as a kid, and then I'd stopped. And I went and got a Harley in 2003. And I went to the Love Ride, which is a ride out here.
They just had that, right?
Yeah. No, it's October usually, October, November. And I was thinking about joining a club. I was thinking about joining a Vietnam Vets Club. And I looked at their pictures on their website, and every one of them there was a can of beer in it. So I thought that might be good. And I was at the Love Ride, and I saw a messenger there, and I said, what's that guy all about? And I talked to a friend of mine, and I called up, and I joined, and I prospected, and I've been around 11 years now. It is an unbelievable combination of the two. One of the greatest parts of recovery is the fellowship. The messengers of recovery is fellowship on steroids. I mean, there is, obviously, we all love fellow members of anybody that's in recovery. We all love them, but the brotherhood that we have in this club is really unbelievable.
So a lot of motorcycle clubs started after World War II, right? I think that's really sort of the origin of the motorcycle club. Some went into outlaw gangs, but the major motorcycle clubs were veterans. Are you seeing a lot of vets now coming back and having issues and wanting to join with you guys?
Yeah, we got a few vets in the club. I mean, we haven't seen like an influx of the Iraq people in. We haven't seen a lot of that yet. But a good portion of the guys are veterans.
Right.
We're talking to Chris Sweeney and Mark Elkins. They're members of the Messengers of Recovery. They have a big event coming up, and there's got to be some bikers out there that want to call in and ask questions. 800-222. We'll pay for the call. 800-222-5222. And by the way, our treatment center number, if you have any issue and you just don't want to call in about it, Dial 888-601-6040. There are people there 24/7. 888-601-6040. When you guys ride up together, it must be an awesome sight because there was a ride a couple of weeks ago. There was a lot of bikers. I was at a stop sign for 20 minutes waiting for these guys. And I think it was part of another love ride. But I couldn't believe how many bikers there are. So you're an impressive and sometimes an overwhelming group of people to see when you pull up somewhere. Do you agree?
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
That's not bad, but you know.
Yeah, absolutely. We get different reactions from going down the highway to where we go to a gas station, or we pull into Solvang, with 25 of us, and the Asians are taking pictures of us like crazy, and we all walk to the ice cream parlor. There's the tough guys. We're going to get double dip cones and stuff. That's kind of where our life has taken us today, and you know what? That's okay.
Coming up on May 29th through May 31st, which is right around the corner, you guys are having a celebration, so to speak. Tell me about it. Raffles and poker and kids games and a bike show and food. What kind of food?
We are serving a steak dinner on Saturday night, and there's food served all day long.
I'll be there for that.
Yeah.
It's on Soledad Canyon in Acton, California. Tell me about it.
It's our 20th anniversary, and our founder is coming in from Prescott, and he's going to join us, and it's a big deal for a club to survive and grow and mature for 20 years in any area. So we've decided to do up a really good party, and everybody is invited. It's a clean and sober event. There will be bands, there's music, there's speakers, there's vendors, etc.
Nice.
It's at the KOA off of Soledad, and if you want to camp, you can come up on Friday. It's starting at noon and join us. We got plenty of room. Everybody is welcome. You don't need to ride a motorcycle. All you need to do is be in recovery or want recovery. So we hope to see you all there. And anybody who's interested, you can always go to the messengersofrecovery.com, and any email to that comes to me direct. And I'll be happy to tell you how or where to get there. And I think you guys are going to post a flyer later on.
Yeah, we'll put it on our
Absolutely.
website, and we'll keep talking about it. The Hollywood Hillbillies are playing.
Right.
Are they any good?
Absolutely.
They sound like they might be fun.
They're good.
They're good? Are they as good as our band we put together every year?
No.
Okay, I know that. There's a reason why we can't talk about it. A children's playground, a swimming pool. It sounds to me like an old-fashioned family reunion type thing, where you used to go and people bring food and that sort of thing. Roger's up in Salem, and he's got a question about this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was wanting to ask you guys, two things. First, do you know Mike Warnke, the comedian down in California? He's a biker.
Man,
I don't know.
No, sorry.
A friend of mine. I seen him up at Jesus Northwest years ago up in Washington. And, I was wondering about your recovery method. Like I was reading in the foreword of Dr. Lowe's books how it fell into the hands of the patients. Do you guys use any particular recovery method?
I don't think that's their job to do, but go ahead.
12 steps.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'm in the institute. They said I had a drinking problem, and I brewed mead, and I've never been drunk on it, but I can't get the complete works of AA in here.
Roger, if do you have the internet?
No.
You don't get the internet? All right,
we'll work on that. There's a way to get them in there.
Yeah,
it's
hold on, and we'll have someone take where you are, and we'll make sure some books are sent
We'll
up
send
there.
you a big book. But that's some problem that some people get institutionalized, and they should have.
Well, I mean, now we know that most drug addicts and alcoholics are ending up in jail and prison more than they're ending up in rehab. So, it's disturbing to hear calls like that, but, it's something that people need to keep working on.
And by the way, call back, will you? Because I pushed the wrong button. So if you wouldn't mind calling back.
It's probably his one phone call for the month. You just screwed it up.
No, we know him. Big John, I say Big John because he's the leader. So John, your founder.
Right.
I think I've seen that dude. Did you introduce me to him? I've seen that dude around.
Well, he's been in Arizona for a few years. He retired about 10 years ago.
He's a cool-looking guy.
He is a cool-looking guy.
How long has he been sober?
I think he's been sober about 25, 26 years.
Yeah, he's a survivor. When the new guys, the newcomers come in, I don't even know what I'm asking here. Is there an initiation program for them, or do you have to be? Is it like recovery, where the only thing you have to have going for yourself to come in is the desire to stop drinking? What if a guy's still drinking when he comes in?
Well, we to become a full patch member, you have to be sober for a year and a day, and you prospect for 6 months. So if you come in and you've already got some time, you prospect for 6 months, and then it's voted on whether or not you're a full patch holder or not. If you're new, you come in until you get a year and a day. We've had more than a few people come in. In fact, one of the guys came to a camp out several years ago, drunk to the camp out.
Bye-bye.
No, he was not. He just came drunk to the camp out, never been to the club before, asked about the club, joined the club, and has been sober ever since.
Good. So you let him in?
Years. Yeah, we say you show up to one of our meetings, and you got to be sober. And once you get a year and a day, you can be a member.
Yeah. Well, normally when that happens, the reason I said bye-bye so quickly is that you and I have been in a meeting together where somebody's come in really drunk, and we say, look, this is not the place to be drunk, and then somebody will walk out with them and explain to them that, you're welcome here, but you can't come in here drunk. But by the way, no one says anything about Lexapro and all the other drugs that people are on, but go ahead.
Well, I think that all of these things are important. I mean, even people when they're drinking need someone to talk to. The part when it becomes annoying is when they just keep repeating themselves. But my thing with people, if they reach out when they're drunk, is try and hit them up first thing in the afternoon, in the morning when they get up, right. And then try and have somewhat of a clear, coherent conversation with them. Just because someone's using doesn't mean that they're not desperate to get better. And people can't detox on their own often. Sometimes it requires professional treatment. And so that's, where there's people that are involved in recovery know how to reach other people that know how to take care of problems, even if they're extremely severe. A lot of people have medical problems as well when they're using and addicted. So it's important to make sure those things are checked out. It's nothing to mess around with, certainly.
Yeah, and this is what I like about the messengers is that, there are so many different layers of people who recover. Like we're involved in Music Cares, and Chris and I know a lot of musicians who are sober and pass along the word to other people. And so there's one group that you never thought would get sober.
Right.
Bikers, you never think of them as sober. Doctors, you never think of them as drunk.
Hopefully, pilots.
Or pilots, yeah. And so, Andrew, you see all kinds in our centers.
Addiction doesn't discriminate against anyone. It's something that we're seeing. It's very, very pervasive in any walk of life. Even poverty even actually doesn't produce that many more alcoholics than wealthy people. So there's something to this that's more than just social circumstance. Certainly poverty can bring you down quicker, but that's just because you don't have the money and ways to get around getting out of problems for a longer time, more than anything else, I think. We should take this call. There's a really interesting call in there from Ken.
I was going to take that one. Let's see. That's Ken. Ken down up in Seal Beach. How are you, Ken? Welcome.
Ken, you there?
Hello?
Yeah,
Ken, you're on the air with Pat and Andrew and the Messengers of Recovery.
Oh, very good. I enjoy your show.
Thank you.
I have a friend who I met over 40 years ago in college, and he basically became an alcoholic while in college. And the doctors told him over the years, you've got to stop drinking. I mean, this man, he was a beer alcoholic. And
it's all the same, by the way.
Right. Just okay.
I get it.
No, and he drank basically 18 beers a day. He'd get, 3 6-packs, and he just continued. And the doctors told him, you've got to give it up completely. Well, he was rushed to the hospital about a year ago, and I mean his stomach, liver, whatever, was in bad shape. And the doctors, they saved his life, and they told him that you continue drinking and you'll die. Well, he for about 6 months he did not drink. And then he called me up one day, and he was drunk, and he said that the doctor's wrong. He says, I can get away with 12 beers a day instead of 18. I'll be fine.
Sure. We're not laughing at him.
Right.
But
and drinking mouthwash at the same time.
Yeah, once you start counting.
And so 4 months ago, he was rushed to the hospital in a coma, and he was 2 weeks in that coma, and he passed away. So it was really sad, and I tried to get him help, and he refused. So.
Ken, thanks for sharing that with us, because that's what Ken, thanks so much. And that's what's sad about it, is that because Sweeney and I here had a lot of common friends die in the last 10 years, a lot. And the sad part is they got into recovery too late. Their illnesses had gone too far, or they didn't get into recovery. And the message that we put out every time we talk to somebody is that there is a way out. Believe me, trust me, there is a way out.
A lot of these people that we see we see it a lot with opiates. They'll go out and overdose, or people with alcohol, they'll eventually just drink themselves to death. It's because they're not looking at they're not getting through to the whole picture. It's not enough just to not do drugs or not drink. That's just one part of this. That's a very important part of it. That's how we define you being sober to some degree, but that's also called being like dry. And it's a terminology we use for people that, they may not be using drugs or alcohol, but all the things that drove them to use drugs and alcohol are still operating in their head. And those can be very unhealthy people as well. And being mentally unhealthy and being disturbed, being depressed, being angry chronically isn't a way to live either. And eventually those people are like ticking time bombs, where they're going to go off at some point and they're going to end up relapsing. And when they relapse, they tend to overdo it because they do the amount of drugs that they used to do when they were doing drugs, or alcohol. They drink the amount they used to drink when they were drinking, and they don't survive that. And now we're seeing most of the overdoses happening where people are using more than one substance. So people will relapse and they'll do cocaine and drink, and then it's very, very difficult.
And then the pill poppers can't keep track. Albert Einstein, long before AA said the same brain that creates the problem can't create the solution. And he was right about that, among other things. And have you guys found that when obviously you both know that stopping drinking is only part of it. To me, that's almost the easiest part. Once you get a structure and a program, and then all the other stuff. When you guys late at night are sitting around talking about your journeys, what's the central theme? I know you're all grateful to be alive and good, but what's the central theme, if you don't mind?
I want to say one thing about people that relapse. The fellowship, there's the accountability of the fellowship, which you go to, the same meeting every day or the same meeting every week, and then you don't show up. People are going to say, where are you? Where you been if you miss 2 weeks in a row? Because we care. And that is, once again, steroids with the message. We've got 25 guys who are all watching each other's back. Right. And it's one more part of accountability there, where these guys get in this club and they love hanging out in the club, and when they're thinking about drinking, if they're thinking about relapsing, and usually you think about it, you don't, alcohol just doesn't fall down your throat and you swallow it. And one thing they have is got
dumped. It's all right.
The club brothers. I'm going to let down the club brothers, and it's another thing that I think, because our relapse percentage in the club is extremely low. I think since I've been in the club, I've seen 2 or 3 guys lose their sobriety. Yeah. And in meetings, it's just that number is just not that high.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, and we had a show. We talked to this woman who wrote this article in the Atlantic magazine about recovery, and the big part of it that she kind of didn't talk enough is the fraternity, is it the
fellowship,
concept, and the relationship, and having people to stand next to and hug you and say welcome home, and if you go out like I did.
Well, the general misnomer is if you stop drinking, then you're going to be fine, and then eventually maybe you'll generally be able to start drinking again. And a lot of people, doctors in particular, aren't necessarily well trained at recognizing chronic addiction, or addiction to the point where somebody really needs to be referred for more help. And often doctors don't know who to refer people to. So you get in this situation where people go into the doctors, kind of lie about what's going on. And then the doctor, even if you tell the doctor the whole truth, then they're kind of like, oh, well, I don't really know what to do for you. And so that's why self-help groups have started up. That's why alcoholics started up, because it was a group of people that weren't getting answers from traditional medicine. And they needed to figure out what other components existed besides the addiction itself that makes people go back and drink and relapse. And I think the point that you were just making was an excellent point, which is that, when you're around people that know what's going on, people relapse before they relapse. They relapse mentally, and you can see it in their behavior. And if you're around a group of people that can see those signals, and they're educated through experience or through mostly experience. I think it has to be.
Right.
But if they're educated through experience, they're going to be able to recognize that before the person that's about to relapse recognizes it. And it's that support group and that ability to have people reach out to you and say, look, you're about to fall off the wagon. I can see it. Something's going on. Let's talk about it. Let's find out what's going on.
And the 5 words I always hear when people relapse is, I stopped going to meetings. On the worst 4 words for a guy is, I met a girl. But I stopped going to meetings is the one. And Chris brings up a great point. I go to a lot of meetings. And on the ones that I go to regularly, and I've switched them around, so I go to a lot of morning meetings and I do a couple of night meetings when I can get to them. But if you don't show up for a couple of weeks, he's right. You get a text. And it's not judging. It's like, where you been? You okay? Or you get a phone call, and at first it's irritating. At first it's like,
well, there's still
they
all
don't
that,
trust me or something like that.
Yeah, but also
then,
we're all carrying that shame and guilt still. There's a lot of that, It's the stigma of alcoholism. It's like homophobia that gets internalized. It's the same thing with drinking. The shame and the guilt associated with drug addiction becomes internalized. And all those things that you hear about people saying, oh, those people are worthless, they can't do it, what's wrong with them, they can't work properly, I can't trust them. If you're in that situation long enough, you actually start internalizing all those feelings and beliefs, and that comes out as self-hate and shame, and that ends up having to be fixed somehow. And the easiest way an alcoholic or a drug addict believes to fix that is by using. What they don't realize is they're just laying it, making it worse.
The event is the Messengers of Recovery's 20th anniversary. Clean and sober, and a great group of guys. These 2 guys I know, so we can vouch for them. I think they can vouch for everybody there. It's in Acton, California. We're going to put it on our website, but you can go to their website, which is Messengers of Recovery. Don't put Sons of Anarchy in.
No.
Out of nowhere. Messengersofrecovery.com. And kids are welcome. Trailer parks are welcome. There's camping and all that. You guys, thanks for coming in, all right?
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us, Pat.
And
thank you very much.
You got my back, right?
Of course.
Okay, that's all I care about right now. And I know you have my back, Chris. Both of you, thanks, and good luck with the event. We'll help as much as we can, okay?
Thank you very much.
There they are, the messengers. And the message for you out there is that there are 3 days, 2 days actually, you don't have to worry about. One of them is yesterday, you can't get it back. So why worry about yesterday? The other one's tomorrow. It hasn't happened yet, so you think for today. Stay for today. Love your life. We'll see you next week.
Don't let addiction to drugs or alcohol steal another year of your life. KLEAN Treatment Center provides world-class addiction assistance that also treats the underlying causes and provides vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean. Live, kind, professional help is standing by to provide immediate assistance or to simply answer questions and provide guidance. If you or someone you care about is suffering from addiction, take action now. Log on to cleantreatmentcenters.com. That's clean with a K.